want to get started today as we wrap up such an incredible weekend, right? Just talking a little bit about my story and where I come from. So I am a teacher's kid from Buffalo, New York, and I was brought to this work. Yeah, thank you. Give it up for the Teachers Union, y'all. And, you know, I spent my childhood really entrenched in an environment where service was an expectation, and it was my gift and it was my legacy. And so I remember always having the idea of caring about the shared, the collective struggle, right? And when Trayvon Martin was murdered in February of 2012, around that same time I found out I was pregnant and I was having a little boy. And so my entrance to motherhood was shaped by the fear that Black mothers all across the nation were expressing about the reality of what it's like to raise a Black child in this world. And so I was in my senior year of college, I wrapped up college, and I decided that whatever I was going to do in this world, it was going to be committed to shifting the way that we organize and do this work and show up so that the next generation doesn't have the same fight that we do. And so, honestly, my son is going to be 12 this year. He's my little GOTV baby. Yeah, had him on Halloween, so he's been on the campaign trail with me a few years, and it's really exciting because I'm teaching him in the same way that my parents taught me, and I want all of us to think about that moment. Just take a second to think about the moment that actually brought you into the organizing space. What was it? Who was it that brought you into this space and showed you what your power was, and how you could build that power with other people to affect the kind of change that we see necessary in our communities, because we need that right now more than ever. So I want you to think about that for a second. Think about the moment, think about where you were, the emotions you felt, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the frustration, or the inspiration that you felt that gave you what you needed to step up and do something different, to not accept the status quo. Because we are in a critical moment right now in this country, and the world is watching, and we have decisions to make, and it's going to take all of us in this room. Now, we may not have the same story, the same experiences that brought us here, but we have a shared set of values that ground us in this work and ground us in the vision that we see, the collective vision for our future. And so I am super excited to be here with you all. It has been such an experience, from participating in the Black Caucus and getting to show up and see folks at old friends and making new friends. Netroots Nation really is a special place in the movement, right? It's a critical place where we can come together and share those experiences and learn from each other and deepen our relationships so that we can be steadfast, standing as one, and moving forward in this work. Speaking of moving forward in this work, I am so honored to actually have the opportunity to introduce someone that I, at one point, got to train, because, like I said, I'm a teacher's kid, and though I'm not teaching kids, I'm teaching organizers how to liberate folks. And so it's an honor to actually have someone that participated in one of our trainings at one point in my life to actually come up here and address you all. So I am honored to introduce State Delegate for the 39th District, Gabriel Acevero. Thank you. Have a good one, y'all.
Good afternoon, Netroots. I bring peace and defiant joy to each and every one of you all. I want to welcome and thank you first for all the work that you have done and continue to do to ensure that those most vulnerable amongst us and our movement, the progressive movement, can continue to advance, continue to build, and continue to grow in numbers. As was mentioned, I'm Maryland State Delegate Gabriel Acevero, and while this is my first Netroots Nation that I'm attending, I'm no stranger to this movement, and I'm no stranger to the work that each and every one of us are tasked with doing if liberation and a more free and a more just and equitable world is the goal. Sisters and brothers, family, we are all living in precarious times. You know this, I know this, and a lot of the people that we represent, that we organize, and that we advocate on behalf of are living in fear. Because decades of neoliberal policies have led to neo-fascism potentially coming into power again. And what that means, that each and every one of us are the foot soldiers. Some of us are the frontline soldiers. Shout out to my environmental justice organizers and advocates. You all are the ones that guarantee the struggle for all other injustices. But we recognize that we have an administration, we have a party, and we have individuals who are hell-bent on eroding all the advancements that we have made at the state and at the local level, and more recently at the federal level. And what that means is that we have to work that much harder. We have to get into the communities that are often left behind. Not those who aren't heard, but those who don't have the power, who aren't closest to power, to make a difference or to shake the table. But that's where each and every one of us come in. Because this work that we have to do, while some of us may be afraid, it is important work, and so we're going to have to do it afraid. But we have to do this work because so many communities depend on us being victorious. And what that means is that we not just have to focus on the Congress, but we have to focus on state legislatures, county councils, city councils, boards of education. Because everything that we have to struggle for is only going to be accomplished by organizing. Organizing is the tool of the oppressed. And it is also faith-based work. Because each and every one of us believe we are envisioning a future that none of us have never seen, but we know is possible. When we talk about clean air and clean water and a planet to leave to your generations yet unborn, that's faith-based work. When we talk about bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, even though that's not the reality right now, that is faith-based work. And the only way that we're going to win is by organizing. Organizing is the tool of the oppressed, but it is the way that we come together in a coalition with similar causes to fight for what we believe in. And so today, I'm encouraged by every single person in this room and those outside of this room, because I know that our movement is still alive. And this country, this world will become one of two things: what we make it or what we allow it to become. And I refuse to allow it to become one where we invest more in war and we don't invest in the poor, where we continue to deny Palestinian self-determination and the right to their own land, where we continue to deny trans and non-binary folk and women bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, where we continue to deny workers the right to organize and join a union, where we continue to deny Black and Latinx folks and indigenous folks racial and economic and social justice in our lifetime. Let's end the poverty wages. Let's fight for $20 an hour, index to inflation, and fight for poor people, because that is our charge. This work is not easy, but no one never said that it was. But I, like you, am committed. And as long as we are committed to fighting at every single level of government and organizing in every single community, I promise you, sisters and brothers, I promise you, family, that we are going to win this. The world that we are envisioning that we have not seen is possible, and it is possible because of our organizing. Am I right? Am I right? And so today, we got to recommit to that work. We got to put those who are most marginalized in the center. Make sure that we're lifting them up, because those closest to the pain are closest to the solution, but seldom are they closest to power. We got to elect more Black, indigenous, Latinx, trans, queer folks, more progressives and socialists to every single level of office, because we know that's how we commit to change. So sisters and brothers, let's continue to fight. I don't know about you, but I am still fired up, because I know that this future that we envision is not just possible, but it is worth fighting for. A clean planet, an end to the white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist, ableist structure that denies so many of our community members dignity, and policy that moves away from neoliberalism and this moderate position to where our base is, which is where we are. Progressive ideas, leftist ideas that lift working class people up, that moves those most marginalized to the center and ensure workers have unions and our communities are better off as a result of it. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Are you willing to fight for someone you do not know? Are you willing to fight for a future that you have not seen but we know is possible? Are you willing to fight beyond November for a future that all of us deserve? Let's be clear. Our assignment goes beyond the November election. We all know this. We don't get makeups. So this is our assignment as progressives and as socialists. Shout out to all my socialists in the room. This country and this world, we as progressives and socialists have a charge of creating a progressive vision and bending reality to that vision. That is our assignment. And those who stand in our way, and there will be many, we have to be committed to moving aside and getting straight to the people who are most impacted, because the message that we have is a winning message. Am I right? Am I right? Let's fight for working class folks. Let's fight for indigenous people. Let's fight for Black and Latinx folks. Let's fight for people with disabilities. Let's fight for Palestinians and for Haitians and those in the Congo who are living the results of failed U.S. foreign policy. Let's fight for all of them. Our movement, our solidarity does not end at any fixed borders. Our solidarity transcends beyond these man-made borders that some people want us to believe that we should subscribe to. But liberation for Palestine, liberation for Haiti, liberation for the Congo, liberation for all oppressed people. Are you with me? Are you with me, Netroots? We gonna organize and we gonna win. Solidarity. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Daily Kos founder Markos Moulitsas.
I'm going to bring a little bit of a different vibe. Welcome all. My name is Markos Moulitsas. I'm the founder of Daily Kos. Daily Kos is a community that gave life to this conference 19 years ago. And it's been an interesting 19 years. We've had a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but I don't think we've ever been at a moment as terrifying as where we are today. So I'm gonna give a little, just sneak peek of what the title of this presentation is. It's Don't Panic. There's a lot of that going on right now. There's this debate over the last 3 weeks. And it's a real debate because we know what is at stake. Our rights, our democracy are on the line. Donald Trump is a real threat in what is, once again, the most important election in our lifetime. So it's fair to ask, is Joe Biden the person to get us there? So how did we get there? I hear a lot of people say, not just in spaces like this, but out in the real world. People say, we are such a big country, 340 million people. How did we end up with these two candidates? Right? You've asked that question. Of course you have. And the reason is, one, we had no say in what the Republicans did. They dug into the sewer, found the worst human possible, and that's who their guy is. So it was up to us to figure out who was the best candidate to counter that, to defeat him. And we had primaries in Iowa and New Hampshire, and we got to South Carolina. In South Carolina, the Democratic electorate is heavily Black. And they took stock of the situation. They were taking this job very, very seriously. They took stock of the situation. They looked at Donald Trump, who had just presided over one of the worst presidencies in history, and half the country was still behind them. And they looked at our field, And guys, we're Democrats, we're progressives, we want to love our candidates, we want to fight for people, we want to fall in love. And we had such great candidates. I loved Elizabeth Warren, she was mine. But we had Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris and Cory Booker. We had such great candidates. And those black voters in South Carolina said, because the people that really motivated us the most also motivated them the most. And in a 50-50 country, they did not want to take that risk. So they literally and purposefully picked the least inspiring, most boring candidate in the field. And it worked. It worked. They were right. And then, here's the big surprise. He was a great president. I didn't expect that. I was at a panel last year of the Progressive Caucus, and all of them were like, yeah, that was weird. Like, he was really good. So 4 years ago, he was the right candidate. But 4 years ago, people were already saying he's old, right? And now 4 years later, he's older. And he looks and sounds older. And so this debate is raging. Our problem is that really have no mechanism to do anything about it. It's up to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is saying he's staying. And so this debate where people are trying to embarrass him into quitting is actually doing Donald Trump's bidding. Every day we're focusing on Joe Biden is the day that Donald Trump gets a pass and he wins that news cycle. I did not vote for Joe Biden in 2020. I voted against Donald Trump, and I think that was sort of the sentiment. And so this notion that our candidate has to be perfect when they have a felon, it's a problem. But again, there's not much what we can do about that. But there's something we can do about winning the election, and that's why we're all here. That's why I love all of you. The media has been focused on Joe Biden, and you have these DC Democrats sort of feeding that media frenzy. But it's weird that in all of that, the Google searches for Project 2025 were higher than those for Taylor Swift and the NFL. That's because of people like you in this room keeping their eye on the ball. People are terrified, and that's 1,000 pages of Oppo gold. We can use that, and we will. The reality of the situation is that as much as people are freaking out, this is not a disaster. It's probably a blip. After the debate, Joe Biden's numbers fell about 2 points in the polling, and it's already rebounding in a lot of it. It's called reverting to the mean. And why? Why would that be? Why would you think that after that disastrous debate and the pile-on and the media attention and the frenzy, why have we not seen a bigger drop? And it's because we have narratives in this race. What was the storyline about the two candidates before the debate? Joe Biden's old, Donald Trump's a liar. He's old, liar. I mean, Republicans were all telling us he's senile. Donald Trump's a liar. And then what did everybody see at the debate? Joe Biden's old, Donald Trump's a liar. It's already baked into those numbers. But everybody's so fixated on polling, what they really fail to note is that Democrats have been overperforming in elections since the year 2020. In 2022, on this stage, well, different city, but on this Netroots Nation stage, I came up and everybody was talking about the red wave. The polling showed a red wave. We were going to lose the Senate, and we're going to get killed in the House, and we're going to lose governorships and state legislatures. What a disaster. Because the party in the White House always loses seats in the midterm election. That's the narrative, and a lot of the polling showed that. And I came on stage and I gave reasons why that wasn't going to be the case. And I talked about abortion, and I talked about democracy, and I talked about how Democrats were overperforming in special elections. And none of that has changed. In fact, abortion is even more salient today. There are more horror stories every single day. And then in 2023, we kept the governorship in Kentucky, in blood red Kentucky. We held on. We won every single abortion-related ballot initiative on the ballot. Y'all remember Wisconsin, 50-50 battleground state. We had a Supreme Court election. We won it by 11. So things have been changing. Even this year, 2024, we're still overperforming in special elections, but Donald Trump underperformed his numbers in all the early contested battleground states in a Republican primary by a margin of either 4 to 17 points. MAGA is more likely to tell a pollster that they're going to vote for Donald Trump than they are to actually turn out for Donald Trump. And we're seeing this worldwide. I mean, I know y'all paying attention, right? The right wing was supposed to win big in India, in Poland, and just now in France. But when the polls were counted, when the ballots were counted, when the votes were counted, everybody's like, whoa, what a surprise. And it was a surprise. The data, the traditional metrics, the way to measure campaigns no longer apply. We're in uncharted territory. So this is where we come in. We are doing the work that it takes to win. You're learning the skills, you're honing those skills, you're learning new tactics, you're networking, you're getting ready for these last 4 months. And in 2022, I was so confident of victory, not just because of numbers and the data and the issues. I was confident because I looked at everybody in this room, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. They don't have this. They have Steve Bannon. No, we got better. And this is what's going to make the difference. So my overriding message really is, please, 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 don't fucking panic. We are in a contested 50-50 race. It's tough. But this notion that we can't win with this candidate or that candidate is absolute nonsense. If we do what we need to do, we are going to win this race. So do not panic. Take a deep breath sometimes. It actually helps, I promise. And if we do what we need to do, we're going to win this thing. So thank you so much. Love y'all.
Please welcome Modus Theater's specialty is developing autobiographical monologues with community leaders impacted by the injustice and violence within the criminal legal system, immigration system, as well as transgender and non-binary leaders. Modus features these monologists center stage as the protagonists in the American drama. Now, welcome Cristian Solano Cordova, presenting their monologue from Modus Theater's Undocu America project entitled The Meaning of Courage.
Good evening. It's an honor to share my story with you. This is called The Meaning of Courage. When I was my baby sister's age, I didn't have any worries. And it's funny because my baby sister, the Nai, well, she's an American citizen, so it should be easier for her, but it's not, and it hasn't been. Because the people she loves the most in this whole entire world, my mom, our other sister Beba, and I, we're all undocumented. So when we are threatened, my baby sister is threatened. So she's still forced to bear the burdens of political attacks on immigrants. I remember election night 2016 so clearly. My mom and I were in complete shock, trying to absorb what had just happened to the country, trying to figure out how to handle certain possibilities. I remember frantically Googling, what happens to a U.S. citizen child if an undocumented parent is deported? My dad died young, so I needed to assure myself that if my mom were deported, that I could get custody of the Nai, who was only 8 at the time. But then again, what would happen if both siblings were deported? What would happen to the little one? My mom and I totally lost track of time in our election night panic, so when hours later I came downstairs, I was surprised to find my baby sister, the Nai, sitting in a corner by herself, crying. red-faced, with puffy eyes. With my dad gone, I've always had to be the big brother, or rather father figure, since our mom was always working. I helped Denai with her homework. We read each other bedtime stories. We played games. I would try to answer those unanswerable kinds of kid questions and comfort her when she was scared. But I wasn't used to trying to comfort anyone else when I needed so much comforting myself that night. I remember tilting her chin, glistening with streams of tears toward me, and just looking into those deep brown eyes and trying to do my best to give her soothing answers to the most difficult questions, and just repeating over and over, "Don't cry. Baby, don't cry. It's gonna be okay, I promise. It's gonna be okay. Listen, why would you be deported? Do you even know what that word means? You shouldn't have to. But listen to me. You are an American citizen, and you will never be deported. And you're right, I'm not a citizen, but I've got DACA. They can't deport me. I know Mom doesn't, but Mom's gonna be okay. She's been here for decades. She's not going anywhere. Baby, don't cry, please. I promise, whatever happens, we'll be together, always. I'll be there to put Band-Aids on your scraped knees. I'll be there to help you with your school projects. Yes, we're gonna finish reading Harry Potter together. And I'll be by your side when you need help applying for college. I'll be there for you when you fall in love for your first time, when your heart is broken. And I'll walk you down the aisle one day. It really doesn't matter where, as long as we're together. Yes, of course the puppy's coming with us if we go. Lulu's part of this family too, I'll have you know. Yeah, that's the dimply smile I'd like to see. It's gonna be okay. At least that's what I told her. I did my best to offer her what I wanted to believe, not just for her, but our entire family. Because how do you talk to a child about being taken away from their parent or their siblings without terrorizing them, without stripping them of their innocence? Then, with each day of the Trump administration, the increased deportations of parents like my mom, the attempts to end the DACA program that protects me and our other sister Beba, the willingness to end rules that limit how long children can be detained, and even threats to strip children like Denai of her citizenship. With all these mounting threats against my family, it felt increasingly cruel for me to offer my baby sister what amounted to be a fairy tale, when in reality, she might need great strength to overcome great threats. So this evening, I offer her and you another story. And this story won't make it all better, but I'm hoping it'll help us stay strong, regardless of the challenges that we will face. I was just 3 years old, and my sister Beba was just 1 when we crossed the border with our mom. We walked together with a group of 10, 15 people. We walked for hours and hours at night. I remember we were out in the middle of nowhere, following some dim silver light in the distance. I imagined we followed it because it meant we were going the right way, some shining city. We finally got to a raised road lined with street lamps, and to avoid walking over the street at night and potentially being seen, we crossed through a drainage tunnel under the road. Mom had me walk through the tunnel in front of her, and she carried my baby sister in her shawl. Beba and I were wearing those little kids' light-up shoes that everybody was going crazy over that year. Mom had saved up a lot of money to buy them because we were gonna be seeing our dad after being in the US on his own for a year, and she wanted us to look our best. And those shoes are actually super helpful in that drainage tunnel, helping to light the way for all the people crawling on their hands and knees. But of course, in the dead of night, in the middle of the desert, they were a dead giveaway. when we were finally able to see the moonlight at the end of the tunnel and catch a whiff of fresh air, the coyotes urgently requested that my mom take off my shoes. "There's a border patrol car parked outside," he whispered. The drainage tunnel emptied out right next to a gas station where the border patrol car was parked. The officers were inside, we assumed, so we waited for a while, hoping they would return to their car and drive away. But nobody was coming out, and for some reason, the coyotes grew impatient and abruptly told everybody to move. And in the chaos, everybody immediately scrambled, crawling behind tall grass with their hands on their hands and knees as the coyotes gave us voiceless commands with their fingers on their lips and pointing to the ground. But the ground was covered in cactus thorns and prickles, and I didn't have any shoes. And while everyone else crawled, my mom stood up, carrying both Beba and me in her arms, and she just started walking. And at first I thought we would be caught because, everyone else was still crawling on the ground on their hands and knees, but she stood up tall and walked with a defiant pep in her step, as if she belonged right there where she stood. And that's when I realized she hadn't given up. She just had faith that walking quickly and quietly was her best strategy to protect us. She was resolved that somehow, somewhere, we would find a place to call home, somewhere where our family could thrive. And I've never forgotten the look on my mom's face as she walked out into the darkness of an unknown country. That is when I first learned that the real meaning of courage is not to pretend that you're immune from fear, but rather to calmly and steadily take action in spite of it. Our former president and his current followers, they have done a great job to caricature my little 3-year-old self as a diseased toddler, criminal, murderer, rapist, gang member in the making. They try to scare people. They do scare people who don't know any undocumented immigrants into thinking that a mother carrying her children to safety is nothing less than an invasion. But Beba and I, we grew up beloved in our communities, by our friends, by our neighbors. We both went to college. I even became the first undocumented student body president of my university. I'm not part of some invading army. But like many of you, I'm here fighting for the American ideals I know we can live up to. The former president, he still wants to take away my baby sister's right to citizenship. But I remain hopeful that Denai, or maybe some other young woman, maybe in this audience tonight, will one day be our future president and actually help lead us to a future where we truly have liberty and justice for all. But that reality is going to take a lot of hard work, and not just on my part or on the part of the immigrant community, but on your part too. As Anne Frank once wrote in her famous diary, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Thank you.
Now give a warm Netroots welcome to the National Director of the Working Families Party, Maurice Mitchell.
Netroots Nation, let me hear you. Or you could do better than that. Let me hear you, Netroots. Greetings, greetings, family. I'm Maurice Mitchell. I'm the National Director of the Working Families Party, and it is an honor and a privilege to be in community with you. The energy in this place has been amazing, and I hope you all are ready to return home with renewed energy for the next 114 days and beyond, because we need all of it. And I want to bring the elephant into the room for a moment. I don't know who's going to be on the top of the ticket for the Democrats. But I do know that we can win against MAGA. In fact, I know we must win against MAGA. I don't have to tell you how serious this is, because if you're here, you know that the stakes could not be higher. But before I get to that, I'm an organizer, so I'm gonna invite you to get information with WFP. If you're tired of politics, as usual, and wanna play a part in building a viable, bottom-up third force in American politics, pull out your phones. Now pull out your phones. Pull out your phones, and I want you to go into the text app. I want you to text to the number 30403. Text to 30403 the word Mo. That's my name, M-O-E. And that will send you a link to all my socials. I promise we will not inundate you with random text every hour on the hour. But it's a way for us to be connected. And then once you're in my socials, you could slide into my DMs and we could get into a conversation with each other. All right? Sound good? Great. Now that that's taken care of, family, I wanted to come here and talk about tomorrow. Not tomorrow like July 14th, 2024. Not even November 5th, 2024. I mean tomorrow like November 2044. With all the craziness in our politics, a lot of people missed the seismic election in France last week. The French were facing a rising tide of right-wing authoritarianism, a white supremacist nationalist movement that pits working people against one another. It's growing there, just like it's growing here. They were staring down the barrel of their very own Project 2025. They beat it, because France's left and centrist parties recognized what was at stake, put aside their differences, and joined forces to defeat the far right. What's more, by participating in a united front, the newly formed New Popular Front actually finished ahead of President Emmanuel Macron's centrist coalition and Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party. They don't just dislike each other, the center and the left, they hate each other. Yet, they came together to stop fascism. That, my friends, my comrades, is the path forward for us in the United States. We need to be disciplined, strategic partners in a coalition large enough to hold the Cheneys and the Chomskys of the world. The Democratic Party's establishment and institutions are proving in real time that the Democratic Party itself and by itself cannot get the job done alone. Cycle by cycle, Democrats are bleeding support from working class people of all races, either to disaffection or outright losing them to the far right. Can anybody identify with that? Does anyone who witnessed the chaos of the last 2 weeks not believe that it's time for a strong, disciplined, strategic, viable third force in American politics? After the last few weeks, can anyone really deny that the time for a political party for, by, and with working people, a working families party, has finally come? This is the future. This is the future, a multi-party democracy, political coalitions, independent political power. This isn't just about blocking the right, it's about building a better, more democratic, more resilient, multiracial, feminist, and responsive politics. That's our goal at the Working Families Party. Now, there are big differences between multi-party democracies like France and here in the United States. We have a system that tries to corral us into two big tents. In recent memory, third parties have been top-down affairs, and the biggest impact they've had is coming around every 4 years to maybe make a statement and, ironically, possibly help elect the candidates least aligned with their goals. We reject the idea that politics should be a spectator sport every 4 years. We're doing it differently at WFP. We're building a political party of and for the multiracial working class from the bottom up, county by county, state by state, thinking local, being real, though, about our power and our position as the, for the moment, a smaller partner in the pro-democracy coalition, but fighting like hell for the working class and doing it on our terms. And not just making a statement, but having a hunger to govern. Not just fighting the power, but believing that we must be the power. When we started in New York 25 years ago, they said we were crazy. Then we completely reshaped politics in the Empire State. And we grew, we expanded to more than a dozen states, from Connecticut to New Mexico to Oregon. And everywhere we grew, we got big things done. A $15 minimum wage, paid sick days, automatic voter registration. They thought we were crazy a few years ago when we said Philadelphia could become a two-party city. In Philadelphia, 2 council seats were reserved for minor political parties, and historically, they've been held by Republicans. But then the WFP came along, and we elected 2 black progressive working class champions, education advocate Kendra Brooks and pastor and organizer Nicholas O'Rourke. And that's when we got to work. We passed paid sick days for essential workers during the pandemic. We passed permanent, powerful eviction protections for renters and won more money for reproductive rights and access. Even with a self-described moderate as mayor, WFP council members passed a budget with progressive priorities in Philadelphia. Dream with me for a moment. Think about if we replicate that work and scale it. If we elect Working Families Party candidates or Working Families Party aligned Democrats as city council members, as state legislators around the country, if we elected more mayors like Chicago's Brandon Johnson, if we bolstered the ranks of our champions in Congress, giving support to AOC, to Ayanna Pressley, to Greg Kazar, to Delia Ramirez, to Summer Lee, to Rashida Tlaib, what if we built a real working families majority? What could we accomplish together? What difference could we make in our lives and the lives of working people across the nation? Imagine a nation where we could get childcare if we needed it, go to college without taking on a mountain of debt, earn a fair wage and retire with dignity, access to quality healthcare and medication, a foreign policy that doesn't rely on violence and imperialism for our comrades in Gaza and other parts of the world. And we are 10 toes down with organizing for a ceasefire in Gaza and long-standing Palestinian rights. And we understand that this is a long game. This is bigger than any one man. Any one man in Hungary, in Italy, in Russia, in the United States, or in Israel. It's not about the man, it's about the plan. Which means this won't happen next week or this year. What I'm calling for is a plan. The Working Families Party has that plan. The Working Families Party is that plan, a bottom-up plan that is won block by block, county by county, state by state. Now, to be clear, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. Nothing is guaranteed. Just as my grandmother couldn't predict the future when she packed her belongings and moved to America, but she knew she wanted a better life for her descendants. Or just as my parents, both members of a union, couldn't predict the future when they settled on Long Island, but they knew they wanted something better for my siblings and I. And just like I couldn't predict the future when I linked fates with my comrades on the ground in Ferguson, Missouri, after the murder of Michael Brown, and we built from the ground up the movement for Black Lives. I don't know what's in store. Yeah, you could clap for that. I don't have that crystal ball. I don't know what's in store, which may come as a surprise to my son, who may believe that I think I know everything. But here's what I do know. WFP can be a third force in American politics in a decade if we prevent the fascists from seizing governing power this year. The outcome isn't certain, and the implications of a loss are scary. As you've seen, there are no saviors or Cape Crusaders in Washington. It's just us. It has always been us. We are the ones. It is our duty to be with those that are closest to the harm. We talk about solidarity. This is your time to show solidarity with immigrant folks who will be thrown into internment camps in a Trump administration, to LGBTQ people whose identities will be criminalized, solidarity with people of color and black folks who are seeing their stories banned from school libraries and erased from curriculums. The consultants who raise and spend money will be fined. The bundlers and the donor class will be fined. Major politicians will be fined. Maybe they might be disappointed, their egos momentarily bruised. You know who might be cooked? The immigrant family that's making ends meet, working class black folks in Philly, trans young people in Alabama. Anyone experiencing glee and sharing hot takes right now has no place in a serious, disciplined, strategic left. I have a lot of problems with the Democratic Party establishment. I could spend the balance of this conference going over my disagreements, sometimes disdain, often frustration with the establishment of the Democratic Party. Where we do agree is that this moment is our historical duty. The American face of a global fascist movement must be defeated. We defeat Trump this election, and then we set about ending Trumpism over the next decade. This is our one job. We must get it right. Your job is not dunking on people on Twitter or forwarding or breathlessly reading op-eds written by elites who will not endure any hardship if we lose. We have some very real choices here, and get ready for the facts over feelings portion of this speech. Just yesterday, Joe Biden took the stage in Detroit to lay out an agenda for the next 4 years. That agenda included, and I'm quoting, expanding Social Security and Medicare, ending all medical debt, passing the PRO Act to revitalize the labor movement, building more housing, making the child tax credit permanent, something we must do in order to, for once in the richest country in the world, eliminate child poverty. And on the other side, Project 2025, which includes turning the presidency into a dictatorship, purging the federal government of anyone except party loyalists, outlawing pornography and imprisoning people who distribute it, carrying out the biggest deportation effort in history, outlawing the abortion pill and criminalizing anyone that ships it, restoring moral exemptions to the contraception mandate. That's just a piece of it. Just scratches the surface of this 922-page document. Comrades, the contrast could not be clearer. We have a powerful case to take to working people right now, whatever is happening at the top of the ticket. Now's the time to make it. If you're not figuring out a plan for knocking on doors right now, what are you doing? It's our job to do everything we can between now and Election Day. That means giving our money, our time, our blood, our sweat, our tears, our testimony. We have choices. We can be spectators or we could be agents of change. We could pretend to be pundits and get caught up in the palace intrigue, or we could start knocking on doors or picking up phones and talking to our neighbors, to our family, to our coworkers. And I don't know about y'all, but option 2 speaks to me. And if option 2 speaks to you, make some noise. Make some noise. If option 2 speaks to you, stand up. Stand up. Stand up. If we build the biggest army that we can, if we leave everything on the battle line, if we do the work that we must do, if we do it right, our children will only know a world where Project 2025 and the Trump administration are mere footnotes in our history, and the movement we're building will be the future. This is a call to action. If anything that I'm saying resonates with you, I want you to stay standing and make some noise. Stand up and stay standing. If you believe that what you do in this moment matters, I need you to stand on your feet. If you want our leaders to stop talking about fighting poverty and start talking about ending it, stand on your feet. And if you want every child to go to a great school and believe every elder deserves the right to retire with dignity, stand up and make some noise. If you want every school board, every city council, every state legislator and Congress to be stacked with people willing to serve the people and not wealthy corporations. The next generation deserves young, diverse, progressive leaders who will fight and kick ass for the working class. Stand up. If you love the people, do you love the people? You love the people, stand up and make some noise. If you want to win in November, stand up. If you are down for the long, hard task of building a viable, vibrant third party in this country, the party of your dreams, the party of the working class. Stand up and make some noise. Because when we fight, when we organize, when we build, we win. Let me hear you. When we fight, when we fight, when we fight, when we organize, when we build. If we could do that, if we could stand up, if we could shout to the rafters between now and November and beyond, if we could join with working people to boldly reimagine what America can be, that is how we all get free. Thank you, Netroots Nation.
Please welcome back to the stage, Tennessee State Representative Justin Jones.
Hello, Netroots. My name is Justin Jones, and I hail from the afflicted state of Tennessee. Because the truth be told, the former Confederacy continues to be a birthplace of bad ideas. A lot of this conference, we've heard a lot of sessions of people talking about this Project 2025. And we know that this is not a hypothetical threat, but is a very real and present danger. Because as I said yesterday, Project 2025 is Tennessee 2024. It is Texas 2024. It is Louisiana 2024. It is Arkansas 2024. And if we are not careful, these forces of cynicism that say they want to take our nation back, they are taking us back to a time that we don't want to go to. In Tennessee, this Project 2025 agenda looks like librarians in Williamson County, Tennessee, being threatened and removed for refusing to take off the shelves banned books. It looks like the most restrictive anti-abortion law in this nation. It looks like a state where it's easier to get a gun than it is to vote because you need an ID to vote, but you don't need an ID to get an assault weapon. It looks like $1.2 billion corporate tax cuts, the largest in our state's history, even though people are suffering from starvation wages, poverty salaries, denied health care. It looks like our Speaker of the House threatening to refuse acceptance of federal education money, threatening to defund our schools, threatening to say that we are going to go back to the times of George Wallace, of politicians standing in the doorways of schools and universities between the federal government because they don't want to accept all students because of their sexuality or their immigration status. Tennessee 2024 looks like a state that tries to silence any voice of dissent, even if you're an elected official. A state that says that we'll shut off your microphone, and so you have to bring a megaphone to the House floor to be heard. Tennessee 2024 looks like a state that has proliferated xenophobic, transphobic, homophobic, Islamophobic attacks, anti-Semitic attacks against our community, holding on to a system of plantation politics. But I'm not just here to share bad news with you, because we know where we live. We know the time that we're in. But the hope that I see, the blueprint that I see, is that despite all of this, we are building a movement in Tennessee that is raising up a generation of young people who have scared my Republican colleagues so much, so that they've changed the rules of our legislature. That now a paper sign this size is more threatening to my Republican colleagues than an assault weapon, because this is banned in our committee rooms now. It's a state that has now created a ticket system to sit in the gallery. It's a state that says now, we're going to end session early because thousands of mothers and students and teachers took to our House gallery to say that we are not going to go by silently and allow you to take us back into this politics of regression that seeks to bow down to the interests of the gun industry. But we're going to say that the NRA, which claims to be the oldest civil rights organization, is neither civil nor right. I had a lot written to say, but I want to say something else, because I think I'm just feeling the spirit here is that this time has a lot of anxiety, and it's a lot of trauma that we're dealing with. Working in a legislature in which every day you walk in and your spirit, your physical being, your mental health is under attack is hard. It's something that says that you work with folks who don't see you as equal, who want to destroy you by any means necessary. But they don't know the legacy that we stand in. That we may come there as one, but we stand as 10,000. That each time we walk into the chamber and the speaker says you cannot speak, he does not know that we come from a people who refuse to be bowed down. That we come from folks who said that you will say get back, but we'll say fight back. Or people like my grandma Harriet who will say, hell no, baby, we're not going back. And so what we must do in this time is to say to these forces that we also have a blueprint of liberation and of resistance. This blueprint says to us that when they organize and they fight so hard to silence us, we celebrate. Because you know what that means? It means that we're being effective and impactful. Because if what we were doing did not make an impact, they would not be trying so hard to silence and stop us. If what we were doing was not making an impact, they would not be trying so hard to crush our movement, to attack mothers and children who are taking to the state capitol, to attack lawmakers and expel lawmakers. They would not be trying so hard to stop our movement if we were not impactful. And so that is something to celebrate in, is that what they mean for evil sometimes can be used for good. You can go from being expelled on a Thursday and walk back into your seat on a Monday. I tell you from experience. And so my hope to you, to say to you all, though, is a message from the future, is that Tennessee is a testing ground. And so my message to you is that we must sound the alarm, that we are canaries in a coal mine, that we know what it's like to live in a state that has unchecked power, consolidated power under a Republican supermajority. Project 2025 is about consolidating power underneath the president. In my state, we consolidated power underneath the Speaker of the House, in which every year since 2012, when Republicans have taken over, they have gradually eroded the power of our judiciary, eroded the power of our executive branch. And because that's how fascism comes. It does not come in one bang, but it comes with gradual erosions that if we are not careful, will continue to rise, and eventually you'll find yourself in a state in which you don't know what rights you have left to fight back because they made it a crime to protest. They made it a crime to dissent. They made it a crime to write our journalists. They made it a crime to speak up. And so we don't know what's happening now, but no matter what they say, we have found solidarity in each other that says to these forces of fascism, to these forces of authoritarianism, that we are going to create a blueprint to defeat you here because it can be a blueprint for this nation if we organize in the South. Netroots next year is going to be in Louisiana. I think that in itself is a message that we cannot forget the South. That in itself is a welcome call, as we saw in 1964, that we must come to the South and lift up what's going on. But I know, as one of my friends told me, sometimes these blue states are a little not honest about where they really stand either. Sometimes people like Eric Adams may be just as bad as my governor and my speaker. And so we have to be honest about that as well. Is that these forces of regression, these forces of extremism, whether they are overt and open as they are in Tennessee or more sophisticated and subtle, we will resist them wherever they are found. Wherever you try and take away the rights of young people, the rights of mothers, the rights of women, the rights of femme folks, the rights of our transgender community, the rights of our Islamic and Muslim brothers and sisters, the rights of our Jewish brothers and sisters, the rights of our indigenous siblings, we will fight you. Because if you come for one of us, you come for all of us. Southern segregationists had a saying, and we heard this a lot. They would say that the South will rise again. We heard this, George Wallace. The South will rise again. But I come here in the legacy of a new movement that says the South will rise anew. That someone who comes here as a Black, Indigenous, Pacific Islander, representing the most diverse district in Nashville, says that the South can rise anew, that we can reclaim these spaces, and that we must reclaim these spaces. People tell us, oh, let the South secede, let them do their own thing. Are you willing to discard millions of lives of people? Are you willing to leave your working class folks, your community, your loved ones behind? If this was easy, we would not be doing this, but this is precisely why we are acting in such these ways, because what is at stake is so high. What is at stake is so costly that we have no choice but to disrupt, but to show up for each other, but to stop these forces of authoritarianism from taking us backwards in the places that they think they have a hold on. Because if they were so powerful, They would not have to use gerrymandering and voter suppression and felony disenfranchisement to maintain power. These are not powerful folks, these are fragile folks. They're so fragile that this session they passed a law to increase penalties on what they call divisive concepts. The truth is, divisive concepts are concepts that make mediocre white men uncomfortable. How is it that in Tennessee we can't talk about divisive concepts, but you can put up statues of division in the form of the Confederacy and white supremacy? How is it that we can't talk about divisive concepts, but you've divided our state, split our city into 3 parts to create control of one county, to have a Republican in Congress? You've taken away our voice at the city council level, taken away our voice at the state legislature, threatened to remove our judges, threatened to remove our prosecutors because they will not feed into your agenda of mass incarceration. How do you say we're banning divided concepts when you have created a divided society of have and have-nots, when you have created division in our state? Division that says we're going to pass corporate tax cuts but keep minimum wage at $7.25. How are you going to say you're going to ban divisive concepts when you yourself have divided our legislature to so that there is no one besides wealthy white men representing your party because everyone else has been run out? Everyone else who has a different agenda, a different experience has been run out of your party. How will you talk about banning divisive concepts when you are the exemplar of division? I come from a new South, Tennessee, a South that says that yes, Tennessee is the birthplace of the KKK, but it's also the birthplace of the Nashville student movement, where young people rose up to make our state the first state to desegregate our lunch counters. And it's our time to rise up again. I believe that we can build a new South, and in so doing, build a new nation. But we must do it in deep solidarity with each other. So when we come to Netroots in Louisiana, let's put our working boots on. Let's get to work and hit these streets. Let's let those governors and all those extremists in Louisiana know who have profited off of mass incarceration, who've brought back the new Jim Crow, that we come in a spirit of liberation that says we will fight you in the South. We will fight you in D.C. from the State House to the White House. We will not bow down to fake dictators. But we will rise up time and time again. We will rise up, and I know it's hot out there in Baltimore, but baby, it's time to turn up the heat of justice in this state, in this city. We're gonna rise up, tear it down if we have to, build something back new again, turn it right side up again, turn it around, pick it up, jump up and down, whatever we have to do. We are going to build an earthquake to shake this nation forward. And so power to the people, power to the people. I'm about to burn up in this jacket, so power to you all. Bless y'all. I'll see you all in Louisiana. I'll see y'all in the streets. I'll see you in the State House. Power to the people.
Netroots family, welcome Netroots Nation board member Anthony Robinson.
What's up, Netroots? I said, what's up, Netroots? Pardon my grammar, but y'all look good. If you've had a good time at Netroots 24 in Baltimore, give me some finger snaps. Yeah, they did that. How you wrap up a conference is just as important as how you started. We kicked off Netroots with a message centered around the power of resilience, perseverance, and community. And we're closing out conference with a call to hope, action, and bridge building. Our closing features an intimate and engaging conversation with 2 dynamic peacemakers, one Palestinian, one Israeli. They both are peace entrepreneurs and leaders, and they've been at the forefront of the peace movement in Palestine and Israel over the past 9 months. They have been speaking all over the world, even meeting with Pope Francis to push for action and policy change. Amidst unimaginable loss and grief, these 2 have been unwavering advocates for peace and regional security for all people living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, calling for an immediate ceasefire, the return of all hostages, and the initiation of an urgently needed peace process to end the conflict and make way for reconciliation, justice, and safety for all. Netroots, please join me with a big round of applause in welcoming to the stage Aziz Abu Sara and Maoz Inon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Netroots, for having us. So we've decided to do something a little bit different than what we normally do. We normally talk for 20, 30, 40 minutes, and at the end of our talk, we hug. But we thought, why wait for 40 minutes to embrace each other and to hug each other? So we're reordering our speech, and we want to start with a hug, because people assume when an Israeli and a Palestinian are together that we must be on the opposite sides, and that is not true. We are not here to be on opposite sides. We are here to be together on the same side of justice, of equality, of peace, and we want to take this moment to embrace each other, to hug each other, and to ask you to embrace each other, nod at each other, shake each other, whatever you feel comfortable, or hug each other. So we're going to take that moment to do that.
Thank you, Aziz. And I promise we'll hug again at the end. On October 7th, I lost my parents. I lost so many childhood friends, their parents, their children that were killed or kidnapped to Gaza. But I won a brother. I won Aziz, and I won a tribe of peacemakers, Israelis and Palestinian, international friends and supporters like Mooney here in the crowd and Gili. And from today on, I hope you will be on our tribe too, because we need to work together, not to predict the future, but to change the future. And together, we can change the future. Yes. I gave many speeches, some with Aziz, some by myself after October 7th, and I was starting by stating that nothing can prepare you or you for such a tragedy. Nothing can prepare you. But then, I think it was in late November, I realized that I was wrong. All my life was just a preparation for losing my parents. And sadly and ironically, it was my parents who prepared me to this moment. My grandparents from both sides were Zionist pioneers, immigrating to Palestine under the British mandate at the late 30s of last century, and they both established two kibbutz in the Negev. They were pioneers, and I was born in my father's kibbutz, Niram, just a mile from the border with Gaza. And my father was a farmer, and it's very difficult to be a farmer. It doesn't matter where you farm. And every evening we used to have a dinner together at our house, and my father would share the challenges in the farm, the drought, the floods, the insects, the cold, the heat wave. But at the same sentence, he will say, next year I'm going to sow again, because next year is going to be a better year. But I must do everything to make it better. I must get the best seeds. I will fertile the land. I will make it ready for the rain to come, and I will let nature do its part. And he integrated into me that I know that the future is going to be better, and I know it's up to me to make it this way. And my mom was a very talented artist. She painted thousands of mandala, the Eastern way of painting within a circle. And from all the mandala she painted, she gave me only one. And there she wrote, all our dreams can be fulfilled if we have the courage to chase them. So my mom gave me the courage and the ability to dream. And a dream is an action, like soon we're going to say how hope is an action. Hope is an action that you are doing. You are doing here in Networks an amazing work of creating hope, which we are privileged to be here and do it with you. But dream is also an action. And where we come from Palestine and Israel, our leaders lost the ability to imagine a better future. So we have decided to stood up and to do what they're lacking and what they cannot do or forgot how to do. So we imagine a better future, and we are honored to come and do it here with you. So really thank you for having us here on the stage. And I met Aziz only once before October 7th, and even though our companies were doing some joint projects, I think it was October the 8th or the 9th that Aziz sent me a message that he is paying his condolences and standing with me. And you cannot imagine how difficult it is and how brave a Palestinian or Israeli must be in order to empathize and recognize the pain and the sorrow of each other, the pain and the sorrow that we are implementing on each other for nearly a century. So immediately as Aziz sent me this message, of course, I answered him and I shared it with my family. And since then, we are working together and we are building a partnership and we are building a movement that will make peace possible in the near future.
Like Maoz, I also lost my brother when I was 10 years old. And at 10 years old, nothing prepares you for losing your brother. Nothing prepares you for having that bereavement. Nothing prepares you for the anger, the hate, the bitterness. It almost feels like if I was to walk down towards you here in the audience and I punch you right in the face, what would be your response? Many of us, if we're honest, your response is, I probably punch you back. And that's how I felt. At 10 years old, you don't think, let me take a moment, step backward, and think about this logically. You go, I'm going to hit back. And for 8 years, that's how I lived. That was my only focus, is vengeance, is anger. And then I went to study Hebrew when I was 18, not because I want to, but out of necessity. If you live in Jerusalem, not learning Hebrew makes it impossible for you to study, work, do anything. And it's there that I realized that I do have the agency. I do have the choice. That regardless of what other people do to you, you always have the ability, you always have the choice, whether you want to go for hate or you want to go for peace. And that the person who killed my brother, they killed my brother, but they were controlling and enslaving me. But every day I made the choice to hate, I was being their slave. And to say no to that was liberating myself and liberating what we able to do together. And so from that point on, I started working for peace. I wanted to put cracks in the walls that are dividing us. We have, just like we do in the United States, so much disinformation, misinformation, walls that made out of fear, out of ignorance, out of hate that are dividing us. And what we're doing is putting cracks in these walls. What we are doing is saying, enough is enough. No one should suffer what the two of us have suffered. No one should pay the price that the two of us have paid. In the last few months, it's been an absolute nightmare. You know, I mentioned my brother, but I've had cousins who've also been killed. I've had friends in Gaza who've lost their entire families. I've had friends in Israel, actually, on October 7th, who were killed as well. And it's that magnitude of sadness and anger is hard to explain. But what we are doing is saying, we are angry. If you're not angry, you haven't been paying attention. We are as angry as anyone can be. But we are not using our anger for hate. We are using our anger to make a change. It's like a nuclear power. Anger is like a nuclear power. You can either use it to generate light or to generate destruction. And we want to generate light instead of destruction.
Thank you, Aziz. And it's been like an amazing journey on the path to peace that we both and many others are walking in the last months. And I want to share with you the three most fundamental lessons I learned. And I think they are the paving stone of the path to peace. The lesson of hope, the lesson of the future, and the lesson of forgiveness. And all those lessons I learned while dialoguing with Palestinians. And the lesson of hope I learned from Hamze Awaude, a great friend of us. And Hamze was asked, where can you find hope, Hamze? Where can you find hope during this tragedy, during those suffering and pain? And he said, hope is not something you find, it's not something you can lose or someone else will give you. Hope is an action. Hope is something you make. And it's very simple to explain. Wait a second. Let me finish. It's very simple to explain how to make hope. It might be difficult to exercise or execute, but creating hope is very simple. And this is exactly what we are doing here at the Netroots Convention. You create hope together with others. You cannot create hope by your own. So you do it with others by envisioning a better future and acting to make this future into a reality and proving to yourself and to the others that our actions are effective. Because if we are effective, it means we're going to meet this future. Our vision will become into reality. And if it's not effective, let's do something different act. So it's as simple as that to create hope. And listening from the backstage to the speaker before us, I was filled with hope because they envisioned the future for America, for liberation, for equality, not just in the US, but globally. So this is exactly how hope is being created. And now we need to act, to knock on doors, to win the election, and to change the policy or to keep the good action we are doing and to scale it. So that's the lesson of hope. The lesson of the future I learned from a Palestinian friend that at the end of October asked me that maybe what burned my parents' house wasn't the Hamas, was the crossfire from the IDF. I was shocked. We were sitting closer than Aziz and I are sitting now, and she was denying October the 7th. She was denying my narrative. And I didn't know what to say. So when I grouped myself together, I asked her, what does it matter? What does it matter? Who was it? What does it matter if it's the Hamas or the IDF? What does it matter who started? Who is the oppressor? Who is the victim? Who suffered the more? Who started it? My parents are dead. My parents are dead. And they are dead. They were killed because of the conflict, the bloodshed, the cycle that has been going on for a century. And my mission, I hope it will be your mission too, and it will be everyone's mission, to stop the bloodshed. To stop the bloodshed. We are not calling for a ceasefire. We are not going to compromise on a ceasefire. We are calling for a lasting peace between the river and the sea. And then I realized that we are never going to agree on the present and the past. It's two parallel stories that the gap between them is getting wider and wider with every passing day that the conflict is continuing. But we can agree on the future. We have the same future, Israelis and Palestinians, the same future that is based on the values of equality, dignity, reconciliation, healing, security and safety. So let's build this future. And thank you. And the third, and this is the most difficult lesson, the lesson of forgiveness. Also, I learned it from Hamze. Hamze's family were displaced. They were refugees from the Negev to a refugee camp near Hebron, and then he was living the last years in Ramallah, all his life under the Israeli occupation. And he said that he is willing to forgive for the past, he is willing to forgive for the present, but he will not and cannot forgive for the future. So it's really very deep, very profound conclusion. So ask myself, Maoz, who do you need to forgive in order to be a good person like Hamze? And Hamze, believe me, is the best person ever. So the immediate answer was, I need to forgive those who killed my parents. In my narrative, my parents were killed by the Hamas, who is an extremist fundamental organization that is killing and oppressing his own people and innocent people in general. And it was my parents misfortune to be killed by the Hamas. But I wanted to punish. I wanted to revenge. I stated that they are accountable for my parents' death, the Israeli government. The Israeli government betrayed in us. The Israeli government promised us again and again, security and safety. And of course, they totally failed. And I want to punish them. I wanted to take my revenge. But those feelings were destroying me from the inside. I stopped functioning as a father, as a husband, and as a friend. And after listening to Hamze, I knew that I found my cure. I found my treatment. I've decided to forgive the Israeli government. I've decided to focus on my life just in the future. And this is why we are here today. We are here to change the future and create a better future for everyone.
You reminded me, Maoz, of a poem. The poem is by Samih al-Qasim, an amazing Palestinian poet. And he wrote about exactly what you just said, focusing on the future. But it's a painful poem. It says, when my killer rifles through my papers, he will find 3 traveling tickets. When my killer rifles through my papers, he'll find 3 traveling tickets. 1 to peace, 1 to the fields and the rain, and 1 to the conscience of a humankind. And then he goes, I beg you, my killer, I beg you, do not waste such a thing. Do not ignore these tickets. I beg you, my killer, take these traveling tickets and travel and go. And this is what we are doing. It's not about hurting someone. It's not about revenge as much as there are times many people feel it, like Maoz said, you feel so empty inside because it doesn't matter how many people you kill, it will never fulfill that part of you or hurt that wants revenge. How many people die, it just never works. And I know exactly that hole that it leaves inside you because for 8 years, that was the only thing I was focused on. I've worked in the last 20 years in over 60 countries on conflicts around the world. I worked in Afghanistan, I worked in Syria, I worked in Colombia, I worked everywhere because I thought Israel and Palestine was so easy, so I went to the hard ones. But everywhere I've gone, I realized one of the main reasons for conflicts, whether it's inside the United States, in Israel and Palestine, in Afghanistan, is our misinformation, lack of communication, inability to hear, to empathize, to understand each other. And we can live next to each other, literally next door to each other, and assume we know everything about the other, but in reality, not know anything about who's living next door to us. And I remember when I went to study Hebrew, my first experience was going to my Hebrew class, crossing from East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem. It's a 20-minute distance, but East Jerusalem's all Palestinians, West Jerusalem pretty much all Jewish. And I'm crossing this road, and there's a siren. And everyone stands still, like literally just go like this. People stop their cars and go still, like stand still, get out of their cars, no cars moving. And I freak out. Like, can you imagine seeing that happening out here in Baltimore? Everyone just stands still except you. Like, what would you think happened? The normal thing that any of us, any reasonable person would think, it's an alien attack and they're controlling a human. And I thought I'm the only person who's not being controlled, so it's up to me now to save the world. I've read too many of Asimov books. And I started asking people what's happening, and no one would respond. And I ran as fast as I could to my Hebrew class. By the time I got to my Hebrew class to see my teacher, the siren had stopped. She was moving, and I thought, great, it's me and my Hebrew teacher, Israeli. It'll be an Israeli and a Palestinian saving the world for once. It's not a couple white guys, sorry. And And I asked her, I'm like, what is going on? And she said, well, you don't know? I said, no, what is this siren? Why are people standing? She said, today is a memorial for the Holocaust. And I had no idea. And she said, people with this siren happen, stand still, so paying respect and honoring those who were killed, perished in the Holocaust. I lived in Jerusalem all my life. I didn't know any of that. And then I started thinking, all these Israelis who saw me running, they were thinking, look, he doesn't probably respect or care. And so much miscommunication, so much misunderstanding happens when we don't talk to each other. And it happens everywhere.
So when we start talking to each other, and we start dreaming together, and we start planning and cooperate together, then we can change the future. And Aziz and I decided to use what we use in our business life as entrepreneur, the same 5 steps of a blueprint to create our vision into a reality. And we have a plan. We have a 5-step blueprint how to make peace between the river and the sea by the year 2030. The first step is to dream. The second is the values. The third is the roadmap. The fourth is the building a coalition. And fifth is the execution. And we do it parallel. We don't wait for the other and then we move to the next. We work on all together. And we'd like to share with you how we practice and how we execute this blueprint. And to start with the dream. So 2 nights after losing my parents, I had a dream. And in my dream, I could see all of you. I could see all humanity. Our body was wounded from the war. It was horrible. I was just looking and I cried more and more after I look on our bodies. And then I look on the ground and the ground was soaked with blood. There was nothing, no sidewalks, no grass, just blood on the ground. And we were all crying. And as our tears started falling down our face and to our bodies, we cried more and more. We were all crying. And then our bodies started to heal. And we became whole again and cured. And it was amazing, like in an animation movie. It was beautiful to see. And we kept crying and crying. And then our tears started going down to the ground, washing the blood, purifying the land. And then the land became so shiny and brilliant. And then I could see a path, the path to peace. And I've decided, though I was walking it for many, many years, but I was walking it very slowly, doing many other things. I've decided to start walking much faster, because if we won't change our action now, the news that will come from our region are beyond imagination. Like we could not imagine October 7th and what's happening now in Gaza. The first few days of October, we cannot imagine what's going to happen between the river and the sea in the next year or 2 if we won't start changing our action. So I shared my dream with Aziz, and Aziz started sharing his dream with me and hopefully with us.
Yeah, I think our dreams are the same. Our vision is the same. And our dream is that in 5, 6 years, we are able to come to an end of this conflict once and for all. One of the biggest problems that has happened in the last 20 years is that every administration, whether in the US or in Europe or in the Middle East, have fallen into this understanding that what we need is what's called conflict management. Bullshit. We don't need conflict management. What we need is conflict resolution. We need an end to this. Look, I grew up with no citizenship. I grew up in East Jerusalem. I had 0 citizenship. I grew up with 0 papers. Traveling was extremely hard. I'm now an American Palestinian, so I got the American citizenship. And I know the difference between having to apply for a visa and wait 3 months to get accepted to go visit a place and being able to travel without even thinking about it. And so when I look at the future, my dream is that we are equal. We are equal in rights, we are equal in duties, that there is no difference between anyone, between the river and the sea. Whatever the solution is, 2 states, 1 state, equality is the main thing.
And to emphasize it, I want to explain how we are practicing our equality. So as we were preparing to our TED Talk, which happened last April in Vancouver, we start phrasing words and building the structure. And then I asked Aziz, if I'm going to say that my parents were killed, you should use the same term for your brother. And if I would use my parents were murdered, then you should use the same phrase for your brother, that your brother was murdered. Because if you listen to the news and the media, you will see the terms they use for, and it's unbelievable. For Palestinian death and for Israeli death is different. And this is how you're practicing inequality. So we've decided to become a model within our friendship, within our partnership, that we treat each other equal. It's common sense. Because we are equal, we are all human.
And likewise, we understood that we have shared recognition and acknowledgement. When Maoz's parents were killed, I reached out because I believed it's important we empathize, we share in each other's pain, we cry with each other. If we cannot feel each other's pain, we can never work for the future together. I remember a really good friend of mine, an Israeli friend of mine, a few days after October 7th called me. And I said, how are you doing? He's like, can we go on FaceTime? And we did. And he said, I didn't call you to say anything. I just feel so much pain. And I just wanted one of my close friends to cry with. And I thought, who do I call? And I thought of you. And so he called me, and the two of us on FaceTime cried together, cussed at every politician together, were angry together. That is acknowledgement. That is empathy. That is understanding our pain. Look, Maoz and I, tears are as bitter, pain is exactly the same, and our blood color is exactly the same blood color. And we got to come to understanding that that's true between all of us, that our pain is exactly the same. And so this kind of thing that brings us together in pain and in history and in the suffering we're going through can also launch us toward what can we do together.
Yeah. Thank you, Aziz. And the value of security and safety, the principle of security and safety. And speaking to you now as someone that was born as a Jewish Israeli, this is the only thing that matters to the public in Israel. Security and safety, security and safety. While to our government, they care about something completely different. Our government cares about Jewish supremacy between the river and the sea. We care about security and safety. But generals and politicians, they know nothing about security and safety, because there cannot be security and safety to one if there is no security and safety to the other. And the only borders in Israel that are secure and safe are borders that we have a peace, a diplomatic agreement with our neighbors, with Egypt and with Jordan. And the only way to reach security and safety between Israelis and Palestinians is if we'll be equal, if there will be a Palestinian state. There will be a diplomatic agreement, peace accord, between those two equal states. Otherwise, the conflict, the bloodshed will just continue on and on.
And that's what sets us into working for reconciliation together. And reconciliation means two partners. That's exactly what we are doing. When people talk to me about extremists and say, but how do you talk to extremists in this kind of moment? How do you tell them about reconciliation? How do you stop those who are trying to sabotage what you're doing? And my answer, our existence in itself is the antidote to any kind of extremism. an Israeli and a Palestinian who lost family members sitting together, that's the antidote to extremism, because we showing there's an alternative. We are showing there is a different path. And so we are saying liberation is a liberation for all of us, for Israelis and for Palestinians between the river and the sea. We working for, yes, for the safety, for the security, but also for the dignity and liberation of all of us.
Yeah. And I would like now to share with you how important reconciliation is. Because if there is no reconciliation, the bad blood is continue to go through the system, and we must clear it and clean it. So 2 weeks after October 7th, I was interviewed to a radio in Nazareth. Nazareth is the largest Palestinian city within Israel. And I was interviewed to a local radio station, and then Usama, a friend of mine from Nazareth, called me, and Usama is the son of Taha Muhammad Ali, who is a very famous Palestinian poet who died 3 years ago. And Usama tells me that his father wrote a poem that is about me. And Usama's father, Taha Muhammad, he was a refugee from Safuria, a Palestinian village near Nazareth that finds shelter and a home in the city of Nazareth, a city that was also a home for me and my family, but that's for if we'll have 50 minutes, I will share with you how much I love and care about Nazareth. And he sent me this song, this poem. It's called Revenge, and Aziz and I will read it to you now. At times I wish I could meet in a duel the man who killed my father and raised our home, expelling me into a narrow country. And if he killed me, I'd rest at last. And if I were ready, I would take my revenge.
But if it came to light when my rival appeared that he had a mother waiting for him, or a father who'd put his right hand over the heart's place in his chest whenever his son was late, even by just a quarter hour, for a meeting that's set, then I would not kill him, even if I could.
Likewise, I would not murder him if it were soon made clear that he had a brother or sister who loved him and constantly longed to see him, or if he had a wife to greet him and children who could not bear his absence and whom his gift would thrill, or if he had friends or companions, neighbors he knew, or allies from prison, or a hospital room, or classmates from his school, asking him about him and sending him regards.
But if he turned out to be on his own, cut off like a branch from a tree, without a mother or father, with neither brother nor sister, wifeless without a child, and without kin or neighbors or friends, colleagues or companions, then I'd add not a thing to his pain. Within that loneliness, not the torment of death, and not the sorrow of passing away. Instead, I'd be content to ignore him when I passed by him on the street, as I convinced myself that paying him no attention is the best revenge.
Many Israelis, my friend, they ask me, Maoz, you have no partners. You have no Palestinian partners. So I read them this poem, and I tell them that Taha's son, Usama, is our partner. If a refugee that lost his house, lost his family in the Nakba, his son is sending me this poem, and he's my friend. So of course, there are many allies, Israelis and Palestinians, that would and are partnering for peace. And this is, I think, it's what brings a lot of joy along during this very tragic and sad time. And from here, I want to show you, we want to tell you what we are doing, basically, and what are the steps, what is our action. So chapter number 1 in our blueprint is to amplify our voices. And this is exactly why we're here, and exactly what you are doing. amplifies the voices for peace. People asking us, is peace possible? Please don't ask us. Because when Americans ask me, is peace possible, I keep telling them that the largest group of tourists in Vietnam are Americans. And when Germans ask me, is peace possible, I told them, just the other week you lost to England in soccer, or they won.
Spain. They lost to Spain.
Okay. But before that, they lost to England. And now the Euro Cup is being played in Germany. 8 years ago, the most devastating war was being waged in Europe. So of course, peace is possible, so we must, all of us, amplify the voices of peace. And then to build legitimacy to peace, and to us, Aziz, myself, and our movement as the leaders of the future. And this is what this stage is doing amazingly. And the third chapter, and this is directly to you, because we must work together on it. Change the policy. Policy change. Instead of sending Israel military aid, send Israelis and Palestinian reconciliation aid. Reconciliation, and this is what we need. Peace aid. Yeah. Don't send us tools of destruction. Send us tools to build a better future. So this is the first chapter, and it's amazing to exercise and practice it here on the stage.
You know, in America, whenever there's a catastrophe, a mass shootings, people online go, we send you our prayers and our good thoughts and all of that. So let's be clear. We're not asking you for good thoughts and prayers. We are asking you to be part of this movement. What we are saying, this is not Israelis and Palestinians doing this. We need you to be with us, not as allies, but we need you to be with us as partners. We need you to be with us doing this work. Amplifying our voices is being a partner with us, speaking our language, sharing our stories, telling people what works and what doesn't work, understanding that you can be part of this global movement for peace. Because here's the thing. It's not only about Israel and Palestine. This kind of conflict is happening elsewhere. It's impacting elsewhere as well. And so helping us solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will have impacts in so many other places around the world.
Yeah. And to prove how successful we are so far, we opened the TED Convention. It's one of the best stages, not as good as Netroots, but it's a great stage. It's a great stage to amplify our voices. We met Pope Francis on an amazing peace event in Italy. And Pope Francis was saying that we should not ignore or be afraid of the conflict. Conflicts are important for evolution, for growth. But what makes us human and different from all other creatures is that we can solve conflict through dialogue. Dialogue is the answer.
I loved what Pope Francis did because he's such an amazing human being. And he said, I will take your message. He was going to the G7 meeting after and make sure everyone there would hear that language, and successfully got them to change their last report that they came out with. But one of my favorite stories is actually from an Israeli author. His name is Maoz Inon. And he says, if you're walking by a building on fire, you have 3 choices of what to do. The first one, you run away. And unfortunately, many people look at what's happening in Gaza now, what's happening in Israel, and they go, if I get involved, I might get in trouble. Let me stay silent, let me not talk, it's not my issue. However, if you know how fire works, it spreads. So running away isn't the solution. The second option, he said, is you create a committee to investigate who should we blame for the fire. Now, if you know how Congress works, they're very good at that. But by the time you decide who to blame for the fire, everybody in that building would be dead. And the third option, he goes, is to get a bucket, you fill it with water, and you throw it in the fire. But what if you don't have a bucket? So you get a cup, you fill it with water, and you throw it in the fire. But what if you don't have a cup? So you get a spoon, you fill it with water, and you throw it in the fire. Now, would one person with a spoon be able to put out a fire? The answer is no. But if everyone here is thinking about what is it that I can do, some of us have buckets, some of us might even have hoses connected to water, which would be even better. Some of us might have spoons, some of us might have cups. But the biggest thing we're fighting against, most Americans, most Israelis, most Palestinians, I'm convinced, are hardcore supporters of us ending conflict, of us coming to peace. But our biggest enemy is apathy, is indifference. And so what we want to say, or feeling, what can I do? I'm only one person. Yes, you only might have a spoon. Take that spoon and throw some water in the fire. You might only have a cup. Take that cup and get some water in the fire. If you have a bucket, get that bucket and get some water in the fire. Each of us can do something. It might be small, it might be big. Do not fall into believing that you cannot make a difference.
Yes. So, it's been an amazing convention. Yeah, and you are the last to stay. Yes. So, thank you for staying.
Thank you, Netroots.
Yeah, just a second. And we promised us another hug. And we would like to, we are hugging each one of you, and we are reaching out to be our partners in the US as the progressive movement. And we want to promise you, you have partners between the river and the sea, Palestinian Israelis that are fighting for equality, that are fighting for recognition, that are fighting for peace. Peace, salam, shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Netroots Nation. And we'll see you next year in New Orleans. Remember, early bird tickets are available now.